Hi, I'm Gerken with Peghead Nation, and today I'm here with a particularly cool brand new Martin, the D-42 Special. If you know Martin guitars, you of course know that the Style 42 is one of the highest models in the traditional Martin lineup, and as such, it's a style that's kind of set in its ways. You know sort of what to expect when you see a Style 42 guitars. But every now and then, the company decides to sort of do something a little different within those parameters, and this is a great example of that. This guitar is really the result of a very cool collaboration that reaches back to a former Martin employee, Dick Boak, who was at the company for more than 40 years, from the 70s to just a couple of years ago. Dick had several different important roles at the company, from artist relations to design to working behind the scene and all kinds of things Martin related. He is also a great illustrator. Some of you may be aware of Dick Boak's books about illustration on guitars. And of course, he's authored several books about Martin guitars as well. And as such, he came up with this incredibly elaborate inlaid pickguard design. And now inlaid pickguards are not something that we see a lot on Martin guitars. There are some examples, both in production models and of course the custom shop can do certain designs as well. This is incredibly elaborate. It's a floral design. It's an original design that's not really based on anything that Martin's done before. And Dick came up with this about 23, 25 years ago, at a time when Martin had just started using a laser engraving or laser etching machine to do certain designs on various materials. But at the time, this design proved to be too much for the machine to handle. The pickguard samples that they tried to make basically fell apart as they were using the machine. And so the project was essentially shelved and it was never used. Of course, Dick still had the drawings, and I called him up to talk about the design of this guitar, and he said he, of course, had the drawings in his drawers. Came across them a couple of years ago and decided to revisit the design and sent them to the folks at Pearlworks, who specialize in all kinds of inlay design, and they are set up to do the kind of engraving and laser etching and all that kind of stuff in a very dedicated, specific way. Dick started working with Bill Seymour and Jeremy Chisholm at Pearlworks, and Jeremy has since passed away, so this is also a nice tribute to Jeremy in this way. They figured out a way to do it, to create this design on the pickguard. Dick showed the design to Chris Martin. This is after he'd left the company. Chris apparently loved the design and said, let's do something with it. We want to do a new high-end dreadnought. Can you come up with a fingerboard and peghead design that would match it? So Dick went back to the drawing board and came up with this very cool original fingerboard inlay that sort of takes a bit of the floral design idea from the pickguard and applies it to a fingerboard position marker type design, extended into the peghead up here. And one very cool thing is that there's no Martin logo on the front, so the design really takes up the full peghead. The Martin logo is stamped on the back of the peghead, and that is something that throughout the years Martin has done with different designs going all the way back to its history. So that's a nice little nod to some of this sort of alternate tradition of putting the logo on the back of the peghead. So it's an original design. Is it still a D-42? It's definitely a variation on the D-42. A standard D-42, of course, would have snowflake inlay in the fingerboard, and that is also a beautiful design. And of course, Martin continues to offer a standard D-42 as well. But for this D-42 special, this Dick Boak created pickguard design, fingerboard inlay, peghead design, really sort of adds a new dimension, new level to the Style 42 in general. Elements that were kept from a standard D-42 is really pretty much everything else about the guitar. It still has abalone purfling all around the perimeter of the top. It has an abalone rosette. It is, of course, built like a standard D-42 would be built, which is to say it has Indian rosewood back and sides. It has a Sitka spruce top. 42 style guitars pretty much get the top quality woods that Martin has available, and it shows on this guitar. Incredibly beautiful rosewood back and sides. There's a style 45 center strip on this guitar. Incredibly beautiful Sitka top, I might say. A beautiful cross grain, tight grain all around. Really kind of a three-dimensional look to this. There's a little bit of an aging toner on this guitar, so it has a slightly aged look to it. But just really stunning instrument, both in terms of the inlay and the execution and the materials. The guitar has a forward shifted scalloped X bracing, which we also find on the standard D-42. It has the modified low oval neck shape that we're familiar with from other Martin guitars, with the high performance neck taper that Martin started using several years ago. Waverly tuning machines, and just overall flawless execution of all the craftsmanship and all the design ideas on this guitar. Now, every D-42 I've ever played had something special to it, and I think there's something about these guitars that does separate them from, say, a D-28 or D-35, even though they're both rosewood and spruce dreadnoughts. The D-42s have always had a certain clarity in my mind. Makes them really great for strumming big chords like I was doing in the intro to this, but also it's really beautiful sustain. And maybe a little bit more balance than I'm used to with a rosewood and spruce dreadnought like this. So it's hard to explain why, but in my experience, D-42s have always had kind of a voice that is identifiable as being a D-42, and that's a very cool thing. And they tend to also work quite well for playing fingerstyle, especially if you were doing finger picking backup for vocals or something like that. Really lovely guitar to play. 1 3/4 inch neck width at the nut, so a little bit more roomy than some vintage dreadnoughts would be. Just a lot of fun to play, and just really neat to see this collaboration between Martin and Dick Boak and Pearlworks on this guitar. I should say that the guitar I'm holding here is one of the 3 prototypes that have been built for the guitar. I believe it's the second one of the 3. The production models will have a label on the inside that is signed by both Chris Martin and Dick Boak to really kind of make each one of these guitars numbered and special in the way that a special edition for Martin really ought to be. So super cool guitar. Anyone who's in the market for a rather high-end dreadnought with beautiful design that really reflects a unique collaboration and history within the Martin Guitar Company ought to check these out. I've had a lot of fun playing this and sort of researching a little bit of what's gone into these, and I definitely think it's a very unique project that I'm very happy to see Martin introducing. So, hopefully you'll get a chance to see one of these at a Martin dealer near you. I hope you've enjoyed this demo. Please come back here to Peghead Nation for more of our gear demos. My name is Teja Gerken.